Hey everybody, how's it going? I'm going to do my October TBR today. I'm also going to give you some recommendations of good books to read in October. You might notice a different setting. I'm holding my camera today, so you're going to excuse the camera work, I hope. But I thought it would be nice to give a little bit of a different perspective, even if it's maybe a little bright behind me. And there's my cat. It's my Bengal cat. She looks like a little leopard or something. So she's going to be in the video today. So let's start with some recommendations. You've probably seen a lot of these if you watch my channel, but if you don't watch my channel, you're new here. These are some good books I read that are great for the season. Also, I mean, in being my TBR for October, happy October. If you're a horror fan, this is like our best time of the year. So let's start with a book called Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer. And also, by the way, I'm shooting this in 4K today, so hopefully the quality's a little bit nicer. I'm trying that out. It's a lot to upload, but we'll try it. Anyways, Annihilation is a good book. It's a great book. I read it recently. It's like a cosmic horror, cerebral sci-fi kind of thing. It's uh, it's not an easy read. It's not a it's not a particularly challenging book to read, but it's not a pulpy, standard plot-driven book. It's very dreamy and cerebral and ambiguous and strange. It's just a very odd book. Like you feel like you're just dreaming the whole time. So it's one of those books that is not always satisfying in conventional ways, but if you like any of that kind of stuff, you'll enjoy it. If you're looking for something that has a great feel and mood, I really enjoyed it, and it's had the reverse effect on me. Normally, I read a book, I start enjoying it, and it loses steam, or I'm not thrilled by the ending. And in this book, I kind of was. I don't know. At the beginning, I'm like, it's okay, but it's just I don't know, something's off. And then as the book went on, it kind of hooked me, and it has some great moments in it. So I really recommend it. There's a lot of books here. Next, a recent read, Revival by Stephen King. And I have all these books here, so you can take a peek at the covers. This is a paperback. This is one of Stephen King's best books. Honestly, I've read a lot of his books. This is so good. It's like a character piece. It's a little more literary than his usual stuff. I have a full review of this, so I won't do long. I'll talk briefly about these books, but it's about a character named Jamie Morton, I believe, and it chronicles his life. And there's this preacher character that keeps showing up in his life, and it kind of ties everything together. It's one of those kind of books. It is a very good read. It has a creeping sense of dread to it. It touches on some very dark topics that are very mature for Stephen King. Although he's done that stuff before, I just think he handled it a little better in here, and it has a one of his best endings of all time. So yeah, it's a good one. Next is Is the Flesh by Augustina Bezterrica. Maybe that's how you pronounce it. She's an Argentinian author. Here's the cover. Very popular book. One that had very mixed reviews, I guess you could say. A lot of people didn't care for it. A lot of people loved it. I picked it up and I expected I would enjoy it, but it really blew me away. I gave it 5 stars. I mean, it was one of the best books I read this year. It's about an alternative future or alternative present in which all animal meat becomes toxic except human meat. So essentially, factory farming and just the total acceptance and normalcy of eating human meat. And it chronicles a character who is involved in some way in that industry, and it's just brilliantly written. It has got some side stories, and it's kind of like a I don't know how to explain it. It's a very literary book. It's got a lot going on. There's some interesting things talked about. Sorry for my camera work. I apologize, but it's a super good book. It's very well written. Next is Night Film by Marisha Pessel. I read this last year. It was one of the best books I read last year. I really recommend it. It reads to me like a David Fincher film. It's about a investigative journalist named Scott. I can't remember his last name, but his name is Scott, and he's essentially he's investigating um, the death of the daughter of this very elusive um, like underground filmmaker, and he gets wrapped up in a conspiracy, and it gets very cryptic, and it's just a very good dark literary thriller. I highly recommend it. Okay, those are my recommendations that I have read. Next, I'll just tell you quickly 2 books I've read recently. The first one is Beloved by Toni Morrison. This is an Everyman's Library copy. Absolutely beautiful, as all their copies are. This book was so good. It was really good. It was a very difficult read for me, In terms of the content, it was extremely dark and disturbing, but also the way it was written was very confusing. It's very fragmented in the way the story is told. There's a lot of magical realism elements, and it can be quite tough to discern what's happening at times. It's very symbolic and poetic. Um, but the more I read it, the more I got along with her writing style, and I don't. It's just one of those books that could be you could study the rest of your life. There's so many things going on in this book. It was really, really good. I will. I think about that book. I finished it a couple weeks ago. I'll just keep thinking about it. I'll certainly reread it. Next is one called Choke by Chuck Palahniuk, if that's how you pronounce his name. I don't know how to pronounce his name, man. Tell me if I'm wrong. I've never read him. Oh, that's not true. I read a little bit of him in high school, maybe even middle school, which is like way too young after having read this. I actually gave up on this, and I really don't do that often. I didn't up on this because it's like a shitty book, but I don't know. I just wasn't getting on with his writing. It felt like I could see what he was doing. It's very satirical. It is very funny. And the setup is kind of original and cool. It's about a character who pretends to choke on food in restaurants so that he can get money from people and like the love and adoration that he's craving. Also, he's dealing with his mother who has dementia, and he has this friend. They work at like it's either a Civil War or colonial reenactment sort of like place. It's very like zany, but it's just like very edgy, and I don't know if that's like the satirical part of it, but it just felt like it was going too far. Like if I was in high school, I would like love this, but it just felt like it wasn't working for me. So I wasn't digging it. But I'll probably try it again. It's not one of those ones that I thought was so terrible I'm done with it. It just wasn't working for me. I'm surprised because I know a lot of folks like him. But next is what I'm currently reading. So I'm not trying to finish this quickly because I want to savor this, but I'll finish this and we'll get started with my October reads. But this is The Broom of the System by David Foster Wallace. And I tried reading Infinite Jest like 13 years ago, and I knew nothing about postmodernism or Wallace or any of those authors. A lot of people recommended it. I had like no clue what was going on. I was not prepared for that. And having read a lot of postmodern works and enjoying it now, it's definitely one of my favorite styles. Um, I figured I'm gonna read because I read Bubblegum by Adam Levin, which is very postmodern, and I will do a review of that book because I didn't really talk about it too much, but I really liked it. Levin is one of the writers to look for now, I'd say. So I read a couple years ago a couple stories from what is it? A supposedly fun thing I'll never do again. His essay book, and I thought it was really funny. So I just decided to start with this, and I just started reading this. I'm about 100 pages in. I love it. It's really funny. I like what he's doing, the way he's telling the story. I don't know. It's good. It's very funny, and I like the way he writes. It just clicks with me. So I'm enjoying that. Okay, TBR now. Sorry that took so long, but TBR. What am I going to be reading? Well, the first three are short story books that I'm already in, so I'd like to finish those. And we have Books of Blood by Clive Barker. This is one of the quintessential horror short story collections. This is like what put him on the map. This is superb. Every story I've read in here has been excellent. It's not like mind-bogglingly good writing, but it is really good. And the thing I'm as you can see about halfway through, and I don't really read short story books like cover to cover, which maybe you should for some, but I like to just pick them up and read a story or two here. That's just how I do it. If I ever, oh, I don't know what to do today. I'm feeling bored right now. I'll just pick up a short story book. I can't find something on TV. I'll read a short story. That's how I do it. This is so good, and it really highlights his versatility. There's just so many things in here, not just genre, but style. Like there's pulpy, fun stuff. There's high art concepts. There's very cerebral things in here, and Barker's prose is just superb. I read The Hellbound Heart. I thought his prose was beautiful. I describe it as beautifully grim, beautifully grotesque. It's just super good. So, next is the Imago Sequence by Larry Barron. Also about halfway through. Very, very good cosmic horror, weird fiction, very like noir inspired sometimes. Just very good writing. But with the case with these kind of authors, and I think particularly with Barron, sometimes I just don't know what's going on, and not even that. Just like I'm, it's so dense. I'm not even sure what he's trying to do. Not all the stories are inaccessible to me. Like there are some stories that are really gripping, but it's a tough read. But I like it. And the last short story collection is The Black Phone, but is 20th Century Ghosts by Joe Hill, which I'm getting to the back end of. I'm on a story called The Cape, which is really good. Every story in here is great. This isn't high art, but this is a great horror collection. If you have not read this, I highly recommend it. They're fun and ingenious, and there's a story in here called Pop Art that is one of the best short stories I've ever read. It's not horror. I don't even know how to describe it. He just takes a concept that is so bizarre and you don't think could possibly work and makes something very moving with it. So there's some great stuff in here. I was going to read some Stephen King short stories, but those that got lost in the mail. So that's that. Okay, so these are like my three novels I'm going to read. First is Ghost Story by Peter Straub, which I believe is considered one of the best horror novels of the 20th century. Never read it. I've never read any Straub. I haven't even read his collaborations with King. I've never got to those, but I would just like to read it. So that's what I'll probably read first in terms of novels. I'll do this after I finish Broom of the System. And I think my middle book, I think I might have already talked about this, but I'm just kind of reiterating, is going to be It by Stephen King. A big chonker of a book. I've read this book all the way through one time, and that was about 6 or 7 years ago. And I read the first 400 pages a long time ago, like in middle school or something. And this is a great book. I love it. It's probably one of my favorite King books. In fact, I would say this, The Stand, and Revival now are like my top three. But this book is so damn good. And then my last book, which is going to close out October, is The Exorcist by William Peter Blatty. If that's how you pronounce his name, maybe it's Blady. I'm not sure. A fantastic film, one of my favorites. Never read the book, and I would suspect the book is probably a little bit better than the movie at the very least, right? So I look forward to finally reading that. In terms of films, I'll do a separate video because there's really a lot. Now, I watch horror movies and I read horror books all year long, but as us fans know, October is the season when everything just has that extra energy to it, right? And so I'll, of course, watch Halloween on Halloween. But every October, I like to pick a different franchise and kind of try to watch as many of those movies as I can. Last year, I think it was Halloween. One year I did Nightmare on Elm Street. I did a podcast. If you, I don't really do podcast stuff often, but if you want to go watch those, I have a podcast episode on almost every movie in the franchise. This year I might do Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And yeah, I'll watch some other horror sprinkled through, but I'll do a separate video for that. But that's all. Let me know what you plan on reading, and if you have a book that you have to read every Halloween or a movie you have to watch every Halloween season. Let me know. This is my favorite time of the year, so I'll keep you updated. Of course, I'll probably do more videos this month than I have been. I'll probably keep you updated on my reads and stuff like that. So yeah, that's all. Take care. Happy reading. Peace out.